Hello everyone and welcome to Ronoko Hall. Today I am going to discuss the very first chapter of ancient Indian history, that is prehistory and protohistory of India. Today's discussion will be helpful to all the UPSC aspirants as well as for the people who are planning to go for the State Public Service Commission exams across India. So let's start our discussion. So even before discussing what is prehistory, let us first try to understand what is history. So as we all know, history is the study of the past, right? And to study the past events, we need some information. And what are the sources of this information? Well, for history, we have many sources which are broadly categorized into the literary sources and the archaeological sources. But when it comes to prehistoric period, we have very limited sources. We mostly rely on the archaeological remnants. That includes the fossils as well as stone tools and implements. So now we are going to discuss about the prehistoric period. Today our discussion will be confined to the prehistoric period of India. So the prehistoric period is broadly divided into three ages. Okay, the first being the Paleolithic age, the second being the Mesolithic age, and the third being the Neolithic age. Now, what is the meaning of Paleolithic? The meaning of the word Paleolithic is Old Stone Age. Okay, Paleo means old and lithic means stone. Similarly, Mesolithic means the Middle Stone Age and Neolithic means the New Stone Age. Okay, so one of the basic characteristic of this period, of this three period actually, is the use of stone tools, right? And what we see that during the course of evolution, man had learned different techniques to survive in the wild, and he had also learned the use of different tools. The tools that were made in the Paleolithic age were different from that used in the Mesolithic or in the Neolithic age. So one by one we are going to discuss the characteristic feature of each period. The Paleolithic men lived in the wild and they used to dwell in rock shelters and caves. Several such rock shelters and caves used by the Paleolithic men were discovered at different places across the Indian subcontinent. During the Paleolithic age, men used to obtain food by hunting and gathering of edible plants and tubers. For hunting, they used rocks. These rocks were generally quartzite. So the Paleolithic man was also known as the quartzite man. Interestingly, this was the period when men learned the use of fire. So now we move from the Paleolithic age to the Mesolithic age. In the Mesolithic age, we see that the early man used tools made of stone which were comparatively smaller in size than the ones used during the Paleolithic period. These small tools used by the Mesolithic men were known as microliths. So the microliths were generally not more than 5 centimeters in size. Now again, we find that the Mesolithic men also survived by hunting, fishing, and food gathering. Here, it is interesting to note that by this time they have learned fishing as well. And in later stages, what we see, they also learned the art of domesticating animals. Now we will discuss about the Neolithic age. The Neolithic age is one of the most important phases in human evolution. Why? Because this is the period when men learned the art of agriculture. So food production basically began during this period. At the same time, we see that the Neolithic man had learned the use of innovative tools. That is, he created tools which could help him in agriculture. At the same time, invention of pottery was also observed. During this period, the man started living in village settlements, and there was division of labor based on gender and age. So, the Neolithic period is a very important period we should remember. Then, here we can see some of the important Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic sites across the Indian subcontinent. Moving on to the next topic, that is protohistory. What is protohistory actually? Well, protohistory in simple terms can be understood as the period when in a certain civilization writing has not yet developed, and we know about that civilization from the different archaeological sources. At the same time, there might be some other contemporary civilizations where we find the records of this civilization. In the Indian subcontinent, the protohistoric period corresponds to the Chalcolithic period. And during the Chalcolithic period, we find that the civilizations that existed used both metal and stone tools. Now, during this period, the first metal to be used was copper, and the alloy of copper and tin, that is bronze, was also used extensively. Now, the Chalcolithic period is also known for the emergence of the Harappan civilization. Well, what is the Chalcolithic period then? The Chalcolithic period, as we had already described, is the period when men used both metal and stone tools. In the Chalcolithic period, people domesticated different animals, and the use of pottery was seen extensively. So, this pottery in the Indian subcontinent was mostly black and red pottery. Now, these Chalcolithic cultures had mostly grown in the river valleys. For example, if we see the Harappan civilization, we find that most of the prominent cities of the Harappan civilization are located in the river banks. At the same time, some other Chalcolithic cultures like Aharbanas culture and the Jorve cultures have also been discovered in the Indian subcontinent. Now we will be discussing about the Harappan civilization. Well, the Harappan civilization can be broadly divided into three phases. The first phase being the early Harappan phase, that is between 3200 BC and 2600 BC. The second phase is the matured Harappan phase, that is between 2600 BC and 1900 BC, and the third phase is the late Harappan phase, that is between 1900 to 1500 BCE. During the early Harappan stage, we find that people in the Indus region mostly lived in the villages. But there was a gradual transition from rural to urban life with the emergence of big cities. The foundation of most of the massive cities of Harappa had been laid during this period. During the matured Harappan phase, the great cities were already thriving, and the excavation at the different sites tell us about the elaborate town planning and urban features that had evolved by this period. During the late Harappan stage, the great cities of this civilization had gradually declined, and by 1500 BCE, this civilization had come to its end, giving way to a new civilization which occupied the same area that was previously occupied by the Harappan civilization. This area is the Sindh region of the Indian subcontinent. Now, let's have a look at the important sites of the Indus Valley civilization in the map. In this map, the important sites of the Indus Valley civilization, including Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Rakhigarhi, Kalibangan, Dholavira, etc., are clearly visible. Apart from this, several other sites are also mentioned. Now, we are going to discuss about the Harappan civilization in details. Well, there is a question to everyone. Why is this civilization known as the Harappan civilization? Well, we often refer to this civilization by two names, either as the Harappan civilization or as the Indus Valley civilization. Since Harappa was the first discovered site, hence this civilization is also referred to as the Harappan civilization. At the same time, since most of the important sites of this civilization had been discovered on the banks of river Indus or its tributaries, the civilization is also referred to as the Indus Valley civilization. The first discovered site of this civilization was Harappa. It was discovered in the year 1921 on the banks of river Ravi by Dayaram Sahni. In the following year, another site, Mohenjo-daro, was discovered on the banks of river Indus by Rakhal Das Banerjee. Since then, several important sites of this civilization had been discovered. Now, let us discuss about the different features of the Harappan civilization. We will start our discussion with the town planning features. The town planning features of the Harappan civilization was way ahead of its time. We see grid pattern arrangement of the houses, very good drainage system, broad roads, then houses with courtyards and bathrooms, and some houses even having their own wells. In some places, multi-storied houses were also discovered. Now, these features of the Harappan civilization was quite different from the other contemporary civilization. Next, let's discuss about the economy of the Harappan civilization. And to understand the economy of the Harappan civilization, we need to understand the different economic activities undertaken by the people. The different economic activities undertaken by the Harappan people included agriculture and animal husbandry, trade and commerce, and art and crafts. So, when we talk about the agriculture of the Harappan people, the agricultural practices of the Harappan civilization were quite similar to that of the contemporary civilizations. Agricultural activities were mainly taken out in the urban outskirts, and the Harappan people, they grew different types of crops that included cereals, wheat, and barley. Harappan people were also the earliest people in the world to grow cotton and rice. At the same time, we see that the Harappan people were also engaged in animal husbandry. They domesticated different animals, and some of the most commonly found animals were oxen, buffaloes, goats, camels, sheep, fowls, pigs, etc. Now, another animal is considered to be of great importance to the people of the Harappan civilization. This animal was the hump bull, which has been depicted in most of their seals. Now, let's discuss about the trade and commerce of the Harappan civilization. The Harappan people conducted trade in food grains, cotton, rare metals, precious stones, ornaments, crafts, etc. The trade of the Harappan people was not confined to the Indus region alone, but it extended to foreign lands like Sumer, Egypt, Mesopotamia. So, from the different seals that we have discovered in the different sites of this civilization, it can be ascertained that the Harappans were engaged in foreign trade as well. Now, what was unique about the trade and commerce of the Harappan people was the extensive use of seals to legitimize trade. Other than that, we also see the use of weights and measures, and probably the barter system was prevalent. Now let us discuss about the craft and pottery of the Harappan civilization. The pottery in the Harappan civilization was red and black pottery. The pots that were made had glossy and gleaming finish, and there were designs of trees, circle, and even images of men. At the same time, many statues, tools, and utensils made of bronze was also discovered at the different sites. Ornaments made of gold, silver, and precious stones were also produced by the people of this civilization. These were also some of the important items of trade. Also, it has been observed that a good number of terracotta figurines have been unearthed at the different sites. Now let's discuss about the religious practices of the Harappan people. Harappan religion remains a matter of speculation among the modern historians and scholars. However, from the different archaeological findings that have been discovered at the different sites, the scholars and historians have come to the following conclusion. Firstly, the religious practices of the Harappans were quite different from that of the contemporary civilizations. The Harappans might have probably worshipped the cult of Mother Goddess. Apart from that, other uh, forms of worship, including the worship of the fertility cult, the worship of Pashupati Mahadeva or Proto-Shiva, worshipping of people tree, humped bull, unicorn, etc. was prevalent. Now, no temple-like structures have been discovered in any part of the Harappan civilization, but the most commonly found monumental structures, including the Great Bath, suggest that there had been many ritualistic practices, including ritualistic bathing. At the same time, we see that both cremation and burials were quite prevalent. At the same time, the use of amulets suggested the belief in ghosts and evil spirits. Now, let's look at the script of the Harappan civilization. The Harappan people had a pictographic script which has now been believed to be of Proto-Dravidian origin. At the same time, the style of writing was boustrophodon, which means that the people they wrote from left to right and then right to left, so on and so forth. So this was the basic description of the Harappan civilization. In the later classes, we will be discussing more about the Harappan civilization and about the findings in the different cities. Thank you for listening to me and hope to see you again in another class.